All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Seewing Yee from the Yee Real Estate Network, and it's a pleasure, and I'm proud to present our newest affiliate partner, Josh Wyman, and his company here in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, before we begin, this is this is very emotional for me because some of you may know that I grew up in Philadelphia and long time ago. Okay, let's put it that way. Okay, back in the 70s. All right, because I have some tremendous memories in growing up in Philadelphia. And I attended junior high school and high school there, and it's just the memory I will always never forget, always take with me for the rest of my life. And it's just I remember so much, every little detail, so every single day of my life. It's just such a blessing. But I left Philadelphia long time ago for college and never came back. See, really, but but I hope to be back more often now, especially hopefully after we have a good long term relationship with my new partner Josh. Then it'll give me an excuse to come back to Philadelphia. Not only
There
to
you go.
visit with Josh and maybe even bring my investors to do some bus tour or from time to time. But furthermore, my mother still living in Philadelphia. She's getting up there in age, so give me an excuse to visit my mother. My mother always say, "Oh, you don't come to visit me often enough." Yeah, that's true. I have not been back to Philadelphia for a while. Over the years, I've only been back a few times, but yeah. So anyway, I'm not here to talk about my family. I'm here to talk about making money. All right, that's the achieving financial freedom using out-of-state turnkey properties. So without further ado, I'm here to introduce Job. How you pronounce your last name? Wyman, Josh.
It's Weidman. That's right. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, Josh.
Yep.
Yeah, have been. Well, he tell you about himself, but he has a very good turnkey system that are very it's a great opportunity to invest in the Philadelphia market. And some of you ask me, why are we venturing all the way to Philadelphia? Well, because the changing of the real estate market dictates that I need to go to where the money is being made at this particular time. So the Midwest market, generally speaking, is what's happening. Many investors all over the U.S. and all over the world are investing in the Midwest, and I could say that Philadelphia is kind of the part of the Midwest kind of scenario. I know they're the Mid East, okay, that's a little bit off geographically, but nevertheless, I believe it's a very good investment methodology. So I'll let Josh go through the presentation for the rest of for the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. Then we'll see what we have in store for you. All right. So Josh, take it away.
That's awesome. Seawing, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to talk to you and talk to your group here today. Um, I want to talk. I'm going to go over what our investment model looks like. But first, I want to talk about the idea of turnkey investment and how a lot of times we both with other clients and even in my own life, I've seen how difficult investing in real estate can be if you don't have the right team in place. And so, it's a well-known, almost cliche idea, I guess. Where you got tenants calling at 3 a.m. with a problem at their house, or dealing with the contractors and finding the right deals, and in your case, in the case of your investors, finding the right cities to invest, things like that. Our mantra here at TCS is that we teach people to invest in real estate the easy way, and that is hands-free, hassle-free. Our goal is to provide a hands-off investment for our investors so that they can invest the same way they do in the stock market, with a mutual fund, and with other financial products, and that is to be able to invest their money and get a return. And in real estate, there's other benefits like leverage and tax rebate, discounts and depreciation, and a lot of the other benefits that you get in real estate that you don't have in other products. So that's my goal today. Is that fair, Seawing?
Oh, we're here. We're in the same page. Yes.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So what I'd like to do is start by kind of introducing myself. I'm the ugly guy in the middle here. Uh, so just a little bit about me real quick before we jump in. I've been married for 14 years, and June 27th is my 15th wedding anniversary. My wife and I have 3 kids. We live right on the outside of Philadelphia. Our office here is located in Center City, in the Old City section of the city. But in my free time, I coach youth wrestling, and I do a little bit of jujitsu on the side to keep myself in shape. I got into real estate after, honestly, I wanted to be in real estate since I was 16. Ended up going to college, getting the job out of college, and went to the University of Maryland. And in about 2006, I got to a point in my life where I realized that I was in the wrong career. I wanted to change careers and made a decision to get into real estate. And in 2006, I bought 3 flips with 2 partners. We bought them. All 3 of them were in subprime markets, and we started renovation. Well, if you know your history, Seewing, you know that it was probably the worst time to buy a house in the subprime market in like the history of buying houses. In the midst of renovation, the subprime industry just kind of collapsed. And that's when I was kind of presented with this idea that really changed my life. And I had a colleague that called me up and said, hey, I know you didn't know this, but I'm a cocaine addict, and I haven't paid my mortgage in 6 months, and my house is in foreclosure. I heard you're buying houses. Would you be interested in taking a look at this? And it's like spring of 2007. I got these rehabs going on, and financially I was a little bit taxed because I had money in all these projects going on. So I went out and looked at his place. It was a really beat up house in a fantastic neighborhood, and I just couldn't say no. I mean, I made him an offer. He accepted the offer, and walked out of his house with a contract, thinking to myself, what the heck am I going to do with this place? I don't really want to, I don't want to get into another flip project. What am I going to do? Well, at the time, one of my friends recommended that I take a look at this this course on wholesaling, and I'd never heard of it before, but it's the idea of flipping contracts instead of flipping houses. So I did a little research and made a couple phone calls. I ended up wholesaling the place. I made $30,000, and I'm looking around and going, holy mackerel, this is a heck of a lot better than this flipping game at this point. So with a partner, I ended up building a business around wholesaling properties. And from 2007 through 2010, we were flipping 10 or 12 properties every month. It gave me a lot of information about the Philadelphia market. I really learned what the business was like, how it worked, what was important, what were the areas that were hot and why. Made some good money. And then towards 2010, what I found is that the market was kind of shrinking. I ran into a lot of situations where sellers would love to sell me their house, but there's no equity. They bought the property or refinanced the property at the height of the market, took out all their capital, and as prices went down, there wasn't much left to buy. So pivoted at that point, and the same partner and I started a property management company called Atlas Property Management. And so we built that company from 2010 to 2015 up to 632 units. And at that point, we ended up selling it to TCS Management. But along the way, I learned even more about the business beyond managing my own properties. When you're managing someone else's and you can see the difference in types of renovations and the choices of locations and the type of tenants they've selected throughout the years, it really was an eye-opener. I learned a lot about what works as a landlord and what works on cash flow and on value of properties, things like that. Well, and along the way, in 2013, we had an Israeli airline pilot that ended up at our office, and he had been investing in Florida. And as the market had recovered in Florida, he decided he wanted to move to a different location. And about twice a year, he would be coming to the U.S. and landing in either New York or L.A. and was fascinated by Philadelphia. So he asked me to sell him some properties and told me what he wanted to do. And that was my first introduction to the turnkey style of investments. And from there, we developed the model and ended up creating some foundational pillars on which we build our business. And these foundational elements became the core of what our investment model is today. And that's changed a little bit over the years, but you know, it's become the core, and I'm going to jump into that in just a second here. So since 2006 to present, I've been involved in more than 1,000 transactions, done over 300 turnkey deals with clients, wholesale, you know, hundreds and hundreds of properties. I've done my own flips. I have my own rental portfolio. And today with TCS Investments, we offer turnkey investments to people from around the world. So I kind of hinted on those foundational elements, and there's three basic foundational points that make up the most important parts of our investments, and they are the location of the property, the renovations, and ultimately the calculations and how these deals are analyzed. So anytime we're looking at a location, we're looking at, I mean, we've chosen about 15 different neighborhoods throughout Philadelphia based on their high rent to value ratio, high home ownership or owner occupancy rates. We're looking at areas that are trending in the right direction, lower than average crime rates, and areas that you know, have a lot of that historically we've had really good success with tenants. So you know, this is the first step. Then we go in and we renovate the property to make sure that all of the major mechanicals are up to date, that the place looks great, that it's going to perform as expected. And then, you know, beyond that, we'll look at the calculations and how we evaluate a property, what we do to make sure that this property is going to cash flow, that we can make predictable, that it's going to, you know, function predictably, it's going to produce the type of returns that our clients expect. And they're going to see cash flow, and they're going to see equity, and they're going to see a good rate of return. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to jump right into the type of locations that we look at. Does that sound good?
Yeah, Josh, before you begin, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Can you make the screen bigger? I think I'm seeing the screen currently. Then I see a small screen to the right side. So maybe the screen is too
You know
small.
what? I gotta, let's do this. Hold on a second. How about this?
Yes, there you go. There you go. Yeah,
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I got two screens going here in my
yeah,
office, and I was sharing the wrong one. I apologize.
yeah. We're good now. Proceed.
Okay, all right. All right, so the locations that we're looking at, okay, we have two different types of investments here. One is geared primarily towards cash flow, and one is geared primarily towards the development of the neighborhood. And I'll get into this in a sec, but the first area that we look at it, we call it our traditional rental model. These are neighborhoods that have good history of cash flow. We're able to get it at big discounts so that you can get equity in the property, you can get good cash flow in the property, we can do the type of renovations that are needed, and ultimately they're going to be able to perform. The second type of area that we look at is what we call our developing markets model. Now, if you know anything about gentrification, there's a huge upside as the neighborhood matures, and the whole process kind of starts out with students, or I'm sorry, strike that. It starts out with artists. Artists move into the neighborhood. It's kind of cool. You know, it's inexpensive, and you know, they get a foothold in an area, and then you start to see students moving into the area because, hey, the artists are here. It is cool. It is cheap. They can get into a decent property, and as that develops and those students start to graduate, they want to hang out with their friends. They're in the same area. They end up moving into these properties, and now we have the next phase, which is the young professionals. And the more young professionals that move into the area, guess what? They start having kids, and they start buying properties in the area, and that's when we go into the last phase, which is like families start moving into the neighborhood. Well, our goal here is to catch the trend between the students and the young professionals. So you have a little bit of both, but there's a huge amount of upside as that neighborhood develops. And so we see values that are doubling or tripling the investment for our investors in as little as 5 or 10 years, where, you know, maybe they're investing. You see here, we're looking at, in our traditional rental model, we're looking at after repair values somewhere between 115 and 175,000, whereas with the developing markets, it's a little bit higher. We're at like 190 to 250. In both instances, our investors are going to see equity in the property. They're going to see the cash flow. They're going to see good returns. With the developing markets, the goal is not so much in the cash flow. It's as the neighborhood improves, either to sell or refinance the property, pull the money out, and as those areas develop, the rents follow and they improve as well. So in this case, we're looking at areas that have lower than average crime rates, that are both stable and emerging areas, and they're chosen by their consistency and successful rental history. So there's a couple neighborhoods that we're looking at here in our rental area. In the rental area, we're going to be focusing on, excuse me, I think it's about 12 different neighborhoods that are primarily located in Western Philadelphia, and then in the northwest quadrant of the city, where it's right on the border of the suburbs. And anyway, these are some of the neighborhoods. We're looking in West Philadelphia at Cobbs Creek and Carroll Park, Haddington. We're looking at Mantua and Winfield. In the northwestern quadrant, we're looking at Germantown, your old stomping ground, right?
Yes.
We're looking at West Oak Lane, East Oak Lane, Logan, Olney, and Mount Airy. These are some core neighborhoods that have great rent to value ratios. They have great return on investments. You're looking at cap rates of somewhere between 8 and 10%, and typically they're going to fall right there at like 9 to 9.5. But again, monthly cash flow and values that are going to keep pace with the market in general. So if we look at Philadelphia as a whole, the image all the way to the right here is kind of a snapshot, an aerial view. We have in this region here, number 8, this bullet point right here is Center City, and it's what most people know of Philadelphia. It's it's the Liberty Bell, it's Independence Hall, it's some of the historical stuff about the city. That's located in Center City. We don't really invest there because the market is very mature, price points are really high, and at the end of the day, there's not a heck of a lot of cash flow or upside in the market. So it doesn't really fit. But with our traditional rentals, you can see here, we have pockets on in West Philadelphia here, and then in the northwest section of the city. If we look at West Philadelphia, there's a couple neighborhoods that we target. We've got King Sessing, which this is something new to our target areas. King Sessing is one of the fastest appreciating neighborhoods in Philadelphia right now, and that's mainly caused because of a lot of the development that's happening outside of the university. University of Pennsylvania and Drexel University are located in West Philly. There's a lot of money being pumped into the area. In fact, it's in the midst of a $5 billion building project that started about a year ago. They released the first $1 billion, and it's a 2 or 3 decade project. But what we've seen is as that investment has hit the streets, so to speak, values and development are happening everywhere. So King Sessing is one of our lower price point properties with a ton of upside. I mean, there are not a month goes by that I don't see increases in the after repair values of these properties. Just north of King Sessing is Cobbs Creek. This neighborhood right here, Cobbs Creek, is fantastic. It's a really high owner occupancy rates. The area has, over the last 3 years has gone from exit prices of about 135,000 up to 175, 180,000. There's a new building project just north of Cobbs Creek here, where they're building a development of new single-family homes that are starting at 220,000. So there's a lot of upward mobility here on price points. What's been really great is we've also seen increases in the rental rates of about 25% over the last 36 months. So what that's done is continue to feed, both development on the rental side and on developing, new residential homes for home buyers. Just north of Cobbs Creek, we have Carroll Park and Haddington. These are 2 of my favorite neighborhoods because even as Cobbs Creek has developed and become more, had a higher percentage of owner occupancy, and the prices have gone up. We haven't seen as many price increases in Haddington and Carroll Park here, but the rents have followed. So you end up with better cash flow, a little bit lower of a price point, but these areas are on the cusp in development. You have quite a few renovated properties that are hitting the market. Now we're in this, we're in the early spring market, and it's really caused a big uptick in development and in price points here. Just north of those two areas, we have Winfield and Overbrook. And these two areas are absolutely fantastic. They've got about 75 to 80% owner occupancy rates, which for a rental is absolutely phenomenal. The owner occupancy, typically homeowners are going to take better care of their properties. The streets are cleaner, the exteriors are really nice, and it attracts a lot of great tenants. In the northwest quadrant here, we've got West Oak Lane, East Oak Lane, Olney, and Logan. Logan is a newer neighborhood that we're targeting. The houses are typically a little bit larger, that's attracted, like I said, in some of these other areas, developers coming in, renovating the houses, and putting these really great properties on the market. It's driven up our refinance rates and refinance numbers with our investors post-construction. So I mean, these are our targeted neighborhoods here for a traditional rental area. On the developing markets, we only have 3 neighborhoods that we target, and these are Brewerytown, Port Richmond, and Grays Ferry. They're located in 3 completely different sections of the city, and we've chosen these areas because of the development that's happening around each of the neighborhoods. What we see here is that as the neighborhood progresses, as it matures, as we see more young professionals and we begin to see more families move into the neighborhood, we see drastic changes in price. And Seewing, if it's all right with you, I'd like to share a little story about this, because I have a property that I renovated last year, ended up selling it in an area that used to be one of our developing markets neighborhoods, but no longer is, and that is Graduate Hospital. Graduate Hospital started as a developing market, probably, I don't know, 2004 to 2005. Well, at the time, we were picking up properties there for, $30,000, $40,000. I sold a house that I flipped just last spring. We sold it for $32,000 over asking price. We sold it for $732,000, and it sold a month before the construction was completed on it. So I mean, that's an 11-year span, maybe 12-year span. But you think about the exponential growth that the area had, and it only happened because you had small incremental development and changes over the last several years that changed the neighborhood. We went through a huge financial calamity. The price of all property dropped off the face of the earth, but this area just kept plugging along and plugging along and plugging along, and here we are, a dozen years later, with price points that are 10, 20 times what the original investment would have been. So it's that's not necessarily typical, but it's a good indicator of the type of regions and areas of the city that we target. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so the 3 areas that we target are Grays Ferry, Brewerytown, and Port Richmond. I'm going to start with Grays Ferry because this is it's got a 1 on it, right? So we'll start on 1. All right, so Grays Ferry is located in South Philadelphia. We got our city center proper here. Graduate Hospital is right in this section right here, and just below it is an area called Point Breeze. Point Breeze started development in about 2006. And what happened was there was a lot of activity, and then in 2008, like everywhere else, everything stopped, and there was no more development, no nothing, and everything kind of froze. Well, come along, fast forward to 2013, 10, 11, 12, 13, things started to pick back up. And what happened was properties that were selling before the crash at 135,000 are now worth 450,000. And this area of Point Breeze, until about a year and a half ago, was one of our key markets for developing markets. But now the price points are at 350, 400,000 on an after repair value. It makes a lot more sense to flip these houses than it does to pursue them for rentals. But what has happened is that as Point Breeze has developed, Grace Ferry has also developed. And so we can kind of see the projection here where we can get cash flow as the area progresses. And in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're anticipating seeing the same type of price points that we see in Point Breeze. So Grace Ferry is one of our areas. Another area is Brewery Town. Brewery Town is just outside of the city center here on the northwest quadrant. The Philadelphia Art Museum is pretty close to the area. If you've seen Rocky running up and down the front steps of the Art Museum, that's where this is located, right here. Well, Brewery Town is one of the last remaining neighborhoods close to the city center that has not gone through development. And so just about 3 years ago, everything kind of blew up in Brewery Town. And it was an area that a friend of mine said, oh, you got to go and take a look at this neighborhood. I think it's the next neighborhood. And I drove through it, and I felt like I was in Beirut. Half the houses are falling down. They're all boarded up. It was a total mess. And so I just watched the neighborhood for a year. And so a year later, each block has maybe 1 or 2 rehab properties in it. And then fast forward another year, and now there's 1 or 2 properties on each block that aren't renovated. And so the area has developed and developed. Right now, you'd be hard pressed if you throw a rock down the street, you're going to be hard pressed not to hit 2 or 3 contractors working on houses. So we've had really a ton of success in Brewery Town, putting people in houses that increase significantly in value, and and the cash flow is decent, but the increases in values and the type of tenants that we see in these properties are just phenomenal. In Port Richmond is our third neighborhood, and Port Richmond is an area that if you go south here, Fishtown is probably the hottest neighborhood in Philadelphia right now. Property values have skyrocketed in the area, and it's really a beautiful area of the city. Because of the development in Fishtown, it's pushed development into Kensington and into Port Richmond. And now Port Richmond is like this up and coming neighborhood. We did a project in Port Richmond about a year ago, and it was located across the street from this old factory that was closed down and boarded up. It was essentially a big warehouse. Well, over the course of call it, I don't know, 2 weeks after settlement, a developer came out, purchased the warehouse, and said, we're going to be developing the land and building 100 new construction houses in the area. And as a result, all of the property value went crazy. And so what's happened here in Port Richmond is that we're still able to get in at reasonable prices and get a really nice finished product that cash flows and ultimately ends up being a pretty nice return. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So where do we find our properties? This is a question that I get all the time. And I'll tell you what, we work pretty hard to find them because right now we're going and looking at about 150 properties before we find one that meets our model. So we have a network of wholesalers throughout the city. There's somewhere around 150 wholesalers that send us deals on a daily basis. In addition to that, we have a network of neighborhood contacts or bird dogs that go out and identify properties and call us when there's a potential deal coming down the pike that might be of interest to us. We do a lot of direct mail and outbound calling directly from our office. We also have relationships with local banks, so we get a lot of REO properties and foreclosures from those banks so that we can, get these things before they ever hit the MLS. One thing that you'll see with is pretty consistent across the board with us is that most of our properties never see the MLS. These are direct from the seller, And so, we're able to negotiate and get a great deal that is, well below market, so that our investors can get in with equity in these properties. So the location is step number one, right? Step number two, or the second foundational point, is our renovations. Now, whenever we're doing a renovation, there's three specific items that we want to touch on, right? The first thing is we got to make sure that this property is going to perform as anticipated, both for our clients and for our tenants. So anytime we're going into a renovation, the first thing we're going to do is make sure everything is working properly, and it will for years to come. So anything without a 10-year shelf life gets replaced. And that means oftentimes we're replacing the roof, we're putting in a new heating system, upgrading the electrical, brand new plumbing system, new windows throughout the property. Once those mechanical repairs are done, then we're going to go back and work on the cosmetic aspect of it. We want to make the place look nice. So we're putting in new kitchens and new bathrooms and new flooring and new fixtures. This allows us to attract the very best tenants to the property and charge the highest rents. And at the end of the day, because everything's working properly, these tenants end up staying for a good long time, so that there's no turnover costs, there's no expenses to replace the tenant, and ultimately the asset just performs as anticipated. Now, when we're doing these renovations, strategy plays a really big part in that, because we're renovating everything and we want to keep the maintenance costs low. First thing is that you'll never see carpet in one of our properties. Now, if you notice here, all of our floors are either tile or luxury vinyl plank flooring. Now, the luxury vinyl plank, it's a little bit expensive, but it's a commercial product that lasts for years and years and years. And I don't know, well, I do know. I had a client one time that put beige carpet in every property. And I can remember going to look at one of his houses after the tenant moved out, and there were all these little red droplets all over the carpet. I'm thinking, what the heck is that? Well, this is before I had kids. And now I realize it was a little kid with like a little juice cup that was walking around, and it was spritzing out the top of the thing. And this little red juice was all over my carpet, stained everything. We had to end up ripping out the carpet and replacing it. Well, with the luxury vinyl plank, you don't have that problem. There's no maintenance costs to replace it. If there's a spill, if there's an issue, it can simply be wiped up and cleaned up, and it's done. The kitchens we use all wood cabinets, which allow us to, if there's damage to a cabinet, we're going to replace a door front. We don't have to replace the whole thing. We've got plywood backs and sides. If there's a leak, we don't have to worry about ripping out a cabinet because the fiberboard gets affected. We're using stainless steel appliances in our kitchen so that we can attract great tenants, so it looks really good. In our bathrooms, we're using some nice tile with some, an accent strip or some, accents in the tile work, so that it looks really nice, and, again, will attract the best tenants. All of our paint colors are exactly the same in every single house. We use a white ceiling, semi-gloss white trim. The walls are a gray color, same manufacturer, same paint color, same line of paint, so that when it's time for the tenant to move out, we can come in just a few days, take this place from, a messy, move out, to clean up the place, touch up the paint where needed, and it's ready to rent in 2 or 3 days, as opposed to, a much longer time period. We're able to turn these things over and get a new tenant in within, within the 30-day period. Seewing, do you have any questions about the renovations?
No, it's very, very, very thorough. I really like the way you guys pay attention to detail, and you just, yeah, this is great. I love your renovation model.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, we get no complaints on this side. So, all right, so let's go over the process. So, when an investor is purchasing one of our properties, they're buying the property pre-construction. Okay, so they're buying it pre-construction and funding the renovation in stages throughout the process. And we do this for a couple different reasons, but the main reason is that we want our investors to be going into a property with a good amount of equity. I mean, in most cases, you're looking at 20,000 or more in equity on each property that they're investing in. So what we do is over communicate. The first thing that we're looking at doing is that we provide a scope of work on each project that includes a draw schedule, and I'll show some examples of this in a second. But there's never a misunderstanding or a lack of clarity in the work that's being done on the property. Ultimately, our job is to make sure that the finished product looks exactly the same and performs exactly the same on each and every asset. So we're providing the scope of work and the draw schedule, and as the work is completed, our investors are funding the next round of construction. We follow a process when we're going through this each rehab. So we start with a roof and ordering the windows and demoing the place. From there, we go in and we complete the mechanical upgrades. So we're putting in a new heating system and plumbing and electrical. And then from there, we go drywall and trim and flooring, and then kitchens and bathroom finishes and paint work. Every single project that we have gets a visit from one of our construction team every single day. So we make sure that we are watching over the construction, making sure that it's getting done and it stays on budget and on time. In fact, we guarantee the construction budget, so that if we go over budget, guess who eats it? Me. So, when we're presenting an asset to one of our clients, they know exactly what the renovations are going to cost. They know what the property is going to cost. They know what their rents are going to look like. And it's a very easy process to follow. So we have daily oversight, and then what we do is we update all of our clients on a weekly basis. We send them an owner update or a project update that shows them, hey, this is what we did last week. This is what's planned for the next week. And here's pictures of the progress of the property. So that at the end of the day, we're on the same page as we go through the process. And, also at the end of the day, you get a finished product that is consistent across the board in every one of our properties. Now, I'd like to kind of show you the scope of work here. So this is a couple snippets from a traditional or a typical scope of work. You got everything broken down to bedroom. In this case, we're moving personal belongings, trash and debris, patch and repair ceilings, walls, doors, all that kind of stuff. And in each room, there's a breakdown of everything that's covered. And then at the end, we got mechanicals. Okay, replace the roof, new plumbing supply and waste lines throughout the building. New hot water heater, new forced air heating system, upgrading the electrical systems. All of this stuff is all listed and detailed. And then we have a breakdown, a construction breakdown. So in this case, we got a $42,000 budget. The first draw is due on settlement. And then after the demolition and clean out is done and the roof is done and the rough plumbing is done, there's another draw. After we install the rough electric and HVAC and windows and hang the drywall, another draw. And so you can go through here, and every one of our clients is updated every week with this information, and they know exactly where the process is. I mentioned the daily oversight. So every property, we're not just taking pictures, and we're also making notes of exactly what is happening throughout the process. So here, this is a screenshot. We use Basecamp to track all of our construction that's going on. In this case, you can see, there's no work at the property today. The general contractor went to the hospital and he had this problem or that problem. Whatever is happening at the property, it's being communicated and documented so that we can go back and say, all right, so this is right, this is wrong. If there's an issue, you can see here, issues to address with the contractor, items to address with the owner, items to address with the office, whatever it is, all of this is documented every single day, and pictures are taken of the progress of the property. And let's see here. Okay, so here's our weekly update. This is a screenshot of the email. The good news, things are really coming together. Here's what happened last week. Here's what's planned for the next week. If there's any notes or anything, it'll be added in here. And then we've got a link to go and view the progress of the project. Does that make sense? Look good?
Yeah, looks great so far. Wow. I'm blown
Awesome.
away by your efficiency, by your transparencies, and yeah, things looking good. keep
Well,
going.
you know what I find a lot of? I don't know if you've ever been on that site, Bigger Pockets, but I see a lot of talk in the forums about turnkey companies and contractors and all this and that. And what I find across the board is that oftentimes an investor will go into a property with the best of intentions, and throughout the process, they end up by the end of the renovations or the end of the purchase, they kind of feel like it's it's the turnkey company or the service provider against them, and it's like an adversarial relationship. We try to show our clients that, look, at the end of the day, we're on the same team here. If there's a problem with the contractor, I'm going to let you know. You know why? Because we're on the same side, and I'm going to present you with options, and this is our plan. Like, as a for instance, in November, we had a contractor that was halfway through a project, and they didn't show up every day. They were showing up every other day, and instead of having 5 guys on site, they had 1 or 2. And when this happened for a week, I called up the property owner or our client. I said, look, this is what's happening. I said, I think we have to replace the contractor. It's not going to cost you any more money, but I wanted to let you know what's happening so that, when we replace the contractor, we might have a short delay. We ended up replacing the contractor, and we finished on schedule, but it was the kind of thing where we're on the same team, and that's the whole goal here. We want the same things. We want a really quality finished renovation. We want a really great tenant. We want a product that's going to, or an asset that's going to continue to produce as expected. So that leads me to my next point here, and that's the third of our 3 foundational elements. That's calculations. So it's nice to have a nice property in a good location, but at the end of the day, this is an investment. You're not moving into the house. You want something that's going to produce results. So this is we use 2 points of in our calculations to evaluate every property, and the first one starts with comparable sales. And what we do is we look for anywhere from 2 to 5 renovated properties that sold within a quarter-mile radius from our property within the last 6 months, and then we use that as our jumping off point. We while our renovations and our finishes are good, they're probably not going to appraise for the top dollar in the industry. Like, we're not putting granite countertops in. We oftentimes don't have central air, and we don't finish the basement. And so typically what we're doing is, let's say that the 3 comparable sales in the area are 150, 155, and 152. We're going to say, all right, so our after repair value is 150,000. Let's take 20,000 off of that, just to account for the differences in our finishes. So we're looking at a likely appraisal value of 130,000. And then from there, we're going to back out the likely construction. We're going to back out investor equity, and we're going to back out our fees and things to create or to look at our offer. And if we're in the same ballpark with the wholesaler, the seller, or the owner, or the bank on what they want on the property, then we'll take it to the next level, and that's to do a real-world cash flow analysis. So this is a sample property. This is actually a property that we did. It's located in the Cobbs Creek section of the city. We were off on some of our numbers on our projections, but they ended up better than we anticipated. So we have estimated an after repair value of 115,000 on this house. It actually appraised for 125,000. The rents, we estimated 1,200, and they actually came in at 1,250. But in this asset, the investor bought the property for $60,000. The closing costs were just under $3,000, and the renovation budget was $40,000. So you had a total cash investment in the property of $102,930. So just under $103,000. For this property, we projected rental income of $1,200 a month, and we take out a vacancy rate equal to 1 month every 2 years. And the reason I do that is because our average tenant stays for 3.5 years, but that's the average. If we look at the mean, it's closer to the 2-year mark. So we use that as our projection, and we say, all right, the tenant's going to move in, stay for 2 years, and at some point move out. Now, They might stay for 10 years, but if we anticipate every 2 years, it works for the model. So long story short, the adjusted annual income is $13,800. And I'm going to break this down in a second to take a look at the monthly cash flow. But on an annual basis, it's a little easier to look at some of the expenses. And so oftentimes, I find that turnkey providers and agents will hide some of these numbers to make their returns look better. Seewing, you ever run into that?
More often than not.
I can't imagine. Right, exactly, right? So what we do is we go through and we account for as many expenses as are realistically expected here. So we look at the license and inspections in Philadelphia. There's a $50 annual fee for a rental license, and it's $50. So that's built in here. We also look at the property insurance and property taxes on the property, and this is an annual rate. It varies anywhere from $200 or $300 in some of our developing markets, up to as much as $2,000 or $3,000, depending on the area and things like that. But we also build in a leasing fee, so you're not going to have to pay to lease the property every year, but on average, you're going to have to pay every 2 years to lease the property. That's 1 month's rent, and so we calculate half a month's rent every year. Management, we build in 7%. It's 7% of collected rents, and then we build in a repair and maintenance budget here. Now, we're renovating this property completely, so in addition to that, we're warranting the work for the first year. So in year 1, there's going to be 0 expenses in maintenance and repairs. There might be 0 repairs for maintenance, for the next 5 years. But at some point, you're going to have to pay some money to do some renovations or upkeep or capital expenditures. So we put it in the budget there. So in this case, we've got a return of $10,232. That's our net operating income off of $103,000 investment. Comes out to just under 10% cap rate. Does that make sense? You following that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the next slide is that exact same property. The only difference here is that we are adding in a loan. So most of our clients purchase the property with their own cash. They fund the renovation, and once the tenant moves in, they'll do a refinance. So here we have the same property, $60,000 acquisition, $29.30 closing costs, construction, $40,000, just under 103. Same rental income, all the same expenses. The only difference here is this principal and interest payment, and that's based on an 80% loan to value on the appraised value. Taking that money out, a 6% interest rate over 30 years. Okay, so 6%'s high, but we like to be we like to be high on our projections. Let's put it that way. All right. So in this case, the adjusted annual income, net operating income, is about $3,600, but our total investment, out-of-pocket cash, has dropped to just over $10,000. This gives us a cash-on-cash return, or a leveraged return here, of 33%. That's not too shabby.
Oh, definitely not. Really nice. Good number. Very good number.
So there we go. Exactly, 30%. That's a darn good return. Now, if we look at the same exact property, I broke this down into a monthly cash flow analysis. In this case, we've got a $60,000 purchase price, same closing costs, renovation, finance expenses, rehab and holding costs, and then the amount financed. It gives us a total investment of $106,619.33. Okay. We've got our annual expenses, same ones on the last spreadsheet. And we break this down in monthly cash flow. We get $1,200 a month coming in, minus the vacancy adjustment, $1,150. Our monthly expenses, $297.33. Our principal and interest gives us a net monthly income of $301.08. Now, I added some expenses here that weren't on the last spreadsheet, and they are the finance expense. I figure, you know what? There may be some fees or points or something like that, origination costs, whatever. Put in $2,500 here, and let's say that it takes 4 months from the start of the renovation to completion of the renovations. So there's going to be some taxes, there's going to be some utilities or whatnot that have to be paid. But at the end of the day, you got a pretty amazing return here of just under 25% leverage return. All right, so let's do the same thing on a developing neighborhood. Okay, well, I know we're running along here, and I appreciate everybody for staying on. Seewing, I'm going to wrap this up here in just a couple minutes, but let's take a look at this return. This is a very similar property. This is the property that I was talking to you about in Port Richmond earlier, that we anticipated an after repair value of 155. Well, because of the development across the street, the appraisal came in at 185. But we did rent it for 1,200. This is a smaller property. The renovations on our developing markets model are a little bit more extensive. And because of that, they're a little bit more expensive. We end up creating a retail-ready product. And anyway, in this case, the total investment was just under 138,000. We've got the same type of expenses here. Net operating income of 10,174. Total cash investment 137,930, comes to a 7.38% cap rate. If we look at the same property with leverage here, you can see the total investment is just total investment after refi is just under 14,000. It gives us an 8.37% leverage return. Now, with these type of properties, the real return here is not necessarily the cash flow. So, this isn't an investment for everybody, but for somebody that's looking in the long term and they're really looking at the potential of growth there in the market and the growth that's actually happening, it can be a pretty good investment. And so we're looking here, and we've got, the cash on cash return, like I said, not the greatest, but it's about $100 a month on that, what I say, $14,000 investment. So, as the neighborhood matures, that's when you see the real return there. So it's really important for me to make sure that everybody on the call here understands our process, because understanding what we do is, and for us to understand our clients' wants and needs, it's a really important part of the process. So in this case, everything starts with the needs analysis call, where we talk to the client about what their timeline is to exit the investment, what their goal is. Is it cash flow? Is it to refinance all or a very large portion of their investment? Or, some of our clients are looking for a finished product that the tenants are ready to step right into or are already in place. And we can provide that as well. The costs are a little bit different. The returns are a little bit different. But the options there, and that's why we start with that needs analysis call, to identify exactly what the needs are for our clients. And from there, we just we look for an order from the client. Once they're ready to move forward, they're going to say, okay, look, I'm looking for a single family or a multifamily. I like this neighborhood over that neighborhood. I'm looking for a little bit more cash flow, or I'm looking for a little bit more equity. Then we go out and we use all of our resources to go out and identify that property and put it under contract specifically for our client. Once we've got the property, we put together a pro forma, and on the pro forma, we're going to have pictures and video of the property, a written overview of the scope of work and the type of neighborhood, the rent returns, the estimated after repair value. We're also going to go into detail with the cash flow analysis. We're going to put together a cash flow analysis on the property so you can see exactly what the expenses are, what the income's going to be, what the costs are going to be. Once we send that asset out, about 50% of the time, we hit the nail right on the head, and the client's like, yep, this looks great, let's move forward. But sometimes, Seewing, sometimes we don't quite get it. And in those kind of cases, we just need feedback. We need feedback from the investors, say, wow, I need some more cash flow, or I need some more equity, or I like a developing market over a traditional rental area, whatever it is, so we can go out and find it. But once we've gotten to that point, the investor says, yep, I like it, let's move forward. We're going to send out a contract. There's a $5,000 deposit that goes in escrow on the with the title company. We get a signed agreement, and then we create the detailed analysis or the detailed scope of work for the property with the draw schedule, and we'll put that together. The investor is going to look it over, sign off on it, and we go from there. The time frame between the contract and the settlement is somewhere between 10 days and 2 weeks. And during that period, in addition to putting together the renovation scope of work, we're also going to secure all of the utilities. We're going to bind an insurance, a builder's risk insurance policy against the property. We're going to make sure that all of our contractors are ready to get going, so that once we go to settlement, we're ready to start the project immediately. Now, the settlement, most of our clients don't come to settlement. Now, if you guys want to fly in from California, that's great. You know, you're more than welcome to. I'll show you around the city. But oftentimes, everything's done remotely. It's nice living in a world where we can do things digitally, right? So what we'll do is we'll send you all the paperwork. You sign it, get it notarized, and then overnight it back to the title company, and then just set up a wire to the title company. They disperse all the funds. They make sure that the title's free and clear of any liens or encumbrances, that, you know, basically the property's ready to roll. Then within a week of settlement, our guys start the construction process. They're going to start the demo. They're going to go in and put a new roof on, get the windows ordered for installation, and then we get into, you know, all of the mechanicals of the house and go from there. The renovation process is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the scope of work. And, you know, it's pretty unique to each property, but it's something that we go over with the client and the investor before, you know, we go through the process. So at the end of the day, once we have gone through the renovations and that's complete, we turn everything over to TCS Management, our sister company, and they'll lease and manage the property for us. It's pretty easy. We'll hold an open house, and oftentimes we have anywhere from 5 to 10 applications on a property. The leasing agent will go through those and screen them and make sure the best ones are sent out to our clients to review, and ultimately have the call on who is moving into their property. And then from there, on the management side, we'll collect rents. We'll, you know, deal with any issues that the tenants might have. And on a monthly basis, you'll receive a statement from our office with a check. And, you know, at the end of the day, our clients invest in real estate the easy way, hands-free and hassle-free. So, Seewing, how many properties are you looking for at this point?
That's a
How many properties should I put down as your order, right?
well, we will soon find out. But Josh,
That's right. That's right.
yeah, you have a very thorough presentation, Josh. You leave no stones unturned, and you're very pay attention to detail. You have a lot of transparency. You're very organized. You're very articulate, Josh. I mean, you speak a simple language in a very concise way, very clear way, so to make it anybody can understand. Novice investors as well as savvy investors can, pretty much understand your presentation from a high level at least. So I do have a couple of questions, Josh.
Yeah, please.
So what are the typical investors you're looking for? What type of cash outlay is ideal for someone to enter your particular project?
Sure. That's a great question. All right. So if we have a couple different options here. So we have clients, probably 65% of our clients purchase in cash, and then fund the renovation throughout the process, and then refinance their money. With those types of investments, you're looking at anywhere from $95,000, maybe up to about $115,000. If you're in the $110,000 price range, that gives you the most options in the market. So, you know, it gives you access to pretty much all of the neighborhoods that we're looking at on our traditional rental model. On the with a developing markets property, the investment's a little bit higher. You're looking at probably more in the neighborhood of 150 to 185,000. But the equity stake in those developing markets areas is typically much higher. We end up with properties that are on the low end worth 185,000 and on the high end worth about 250,000. So, you're looking at 35 to, $50,000 equity in the property. On the traditional rental, it's more in the $20,000 to $30,000 range as far as equity. We've had many clients that say, hey, look, I don't have $150,000 or $110,000, in my account at this point. Do you have any other options? And some of them will choose to use a hard money lender to supplement the cash that they have on hand, to either buy more properties or buy one, and then pay off the lender once the tenant's in place. Something like that, you probably would need around 30 to 50,000. 50,000 is going to give you the most options, but with 30,000, you can definitely get into one of our traditional rental properties. We also have clients that they'll partner with someone, whether it's a colleague or a sibling. I'm working with a client right now that he and his brother bought their first property with us. They're going through the refinance right now, and it's likely that they're going to reinvest their earnings with us. But at the end of the day, they felt comfortable at least getting a start with a partner. In fact, I just met with the investor. They were in town last Friday, and we were able to go out and check out the asset and go and take a look at some other potential investments. So, there's different and varying options for the investment. And, I mentioned this briefly in the conversation, but we also have investors that are looking for a finished product, and they're looking to put down 20% and get a loan for the additional 80%. And then, they're looking for something that cash flows on day one. We can offer that as well, and we've done that in the past, and it's been successful when we've gone down that road in the past.
Wow. Well, Josh, I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, the entrance strategy and the exit strategy, as I call it, it makes sense. So, giving the financial profile of our members, most of our members, Josh, they live in Silicon Valley. The
Hmm.
heartbeat of the high tech world, right? So
That's awesome.
many of our investors are engineers, working at the typical popular companies in San Jose, Silicon Valley. So clearly, yes, some of them will like to do the buy and hold, do the 25% down payment on a finished product. For example, they buy $120,000 property through you in Philadelphia. They put 25% down payment, and then at the end of the day, they will get around 8 to 9% cap rate with a net cash flow leverage for, like, $250, $300. That's a very traditional model that I've been promoting over the years. And so that sounds like that's one model for you. And the other model is which you spend most of the time on this presentation. Ideally, if I understand you correctly, on behalf of my investors, ideally, the optimum way to invest through your system is to for one investor to have 120 grand, 150 grand to do your project. But obviously, some people may not have that much money, or they may not want to risk that much money up front, at least not just
Sure.
yet. And they have 30, 40, 50 grand available, and you will have, they can partner with somebody to do your project. So sounds like to me your entrance strategies, your minimal required investments makes sense. It's very reasonable. Something that my investors are fully capable of doing. So it's a matter of for me to talk with each individual clients that I have, and on a gradual basis, and introduce them to your product. I know this presentation has gone over barely 1 hour, so it's quite lengthy. You know, but
I'm sorry. I've tried to figure out how I can
okay.
cut some of this out and keep it a little shorter. But there's it's ultimately our model is different than not anybody else, but it's unique, and I think each provider has a unique way of doing business. I'm really proud of what we put together, and it's important for me to explain that. So I do apologize if it's you know, kind of taxed your taxed our listeners today, right?
No problem. Something that has to be done. This is you're creating a foundational presentation for your company and for your market. Something which is fine. So yeah. So I have this recorded, and yeah. So let's get started. I really feel comfortable working with you. You sounds like you have a good core value, good philosophy of doing business. You sounds like you care about the client. You have a transparency. It's about communication skills, which over the years I found some affiliate partners are not very good at in terms of ongoing communication. Something I feel you have that pretty much down pack. So
Sure, sure, absolutely.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, no, no. It's a very important part of what we do. Um, it matters a lot. I tell investors all the time that, you know, if I was wholesaling a property, it's kind of akin to going on a date. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, we're getting married. You know, I'm. This is not a short transaction. Just like our investors are buying long term, you know, that's really what a buy and hold investment is. We're also entering this as a long term investment plan with our clients, so that, you know, we're taking them through the process. And at the end of the day, when everything is all said and done, if they're not seeing the type of returns, if there's a problem, if we're not communicating well, you know, look, I'm married almost 15 years. You know, I know that a lot of the problems that anytime I have a problem with my wife, it's usually communication, right? It's either I'm not saying what I'm thinking well enough for her to understand what I'm trying to say, or she's telling me something and I'm not getting it. I don't want that with our investors. So, you know, we try to over communicate and clarify the situation so that everybody knows what's going on throughout the process.
Oh, very good analogy, Josh. So with with that in mind, we we can close out this call. By the way, I mean, again, any investors that want to enter into opportunity with you, they go through me first, so I can do some due diligence and pre.
Seewing, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I forgot to say this earlier. So typically when we're working with a client, we want a commitment when we are going out to find a property for them. All right, so that's why we ask for the order. You know, they place an order, and typically we charge a commitment fee that we apply towards the purchase of $297. Once that's paid, we go out and find the property. Any of your listeners that contact us through you, we're going to waive that fee for them, so that, you know, if they're going through your investment club, and, you know, you're acting as a referral, we're going to waive that fee of the 297 for the initial order, and they can just place an order for free, but only if they go through, you know, you as the contact.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Again, yeah, makes very good sense. And I know you're very busy. I don't want to my investors to bombard you with 1,000 questions.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
But that's not going to happen. But well, yeah, once they're ready, they can put a wire uh, the security deposit. I think what $5,000 and to get the whole.
Well, and that doesn't happen until they're ready, until they see an asset that they're ready to move forward on.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they're putting down a $5,000 deposit blindly. This is they're going to know exactly what they're investing in, exactly what the costs are going to be, and you know exactly what kind of returns that they should see.
Sounds good, Josh. By the way, at least your email you can give out to my
Oh
listeners.
yeah.
Uh,
Okay, absolutely. I mean, they can get more information about our company at realestatetheeasyway.com, or you can contact me at joshw@tcsmgt.com. That's joshw@tcsmgt.com.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time, and Josh, great presentation. And we look forward to working with you, my investors, to look forward to work with you on a very uh, you know long-term profit-making relationship. All right.
It's awesome. I love it.
All
Awesome. Okay, great, great. I thank you so much for having me on, and I'm looking forward to talking to everybody that is on the call here shortly.
Sounds great. Thank you, Josh. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.